Yoga Sutra, Section 1, Sutra 19. Bhava-pratyaya videha prakritilayanam. Bhava-pratyaya videha prakritilayanam. 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 Bhava-pratyaya videha prakritilayanam. Birth, objective, existence, caused, the bodiless, of the merged in Prakriti, of the absorbed in Prakriti. Of those who are vidahas and prakritilayas, birth is the cause. So now I'm really curious, what is vidahas and prakritilayas, of which birth is the cause? This sutra and the next are meant to differentiate between two kinds of yogis. The first kind of yogis, referred to in Section 2, Sutra 19, are called vidahas and prakritilayas, and their trance is not the result of the regular self-discipline outlined in the Yoga Sutras. It depends upon their birth. That is, they possess the capacity to pass into trance naturally without any effort as a result of their peculiar physical and mental constitution. In the case of the second kind of yogis, their samadhi is the result of regular practice of yoga, which requires certain high traits of character like faith, energy, etc., mentioned in Section 1, Sutra 20, which is the next one. While the meaning of Section 1, Sutra 20 is quite clear and obvious, the interpretation of this Sutra 19 has become involved in confusion on account of the different meanings associated with the words bhava, videha, and prakritilaya by different commentators. Let us therefore see whether it is not possible to find a reasonable interpretation of this sutra based on experience and common sense, rather than on far-fetched meanings which merely cause confusion. The first point to note in the interpretation of this sutra is that it points out a class of yogis in contradistinction to the class of yogis referred to in the next sutra, Sutra 20. What are the characteristics of the yogis described in Sutra 20? In their case, it's kind of weird that he's talking about something we haven't gotten to yet. Anyway, we'll get there. In their case, the state of samadhi or enlightenment is preceded by faith, energy, memory, high intelligence. In other words, it is the result of the possession by the yogi of those essential traits of character which are needed in any high endeavor. The true yogis of this class achieve their objective in the normal manner by adopting the usual means outlined in the Yoga Sutras. It follows, therefore, that the yogis of the other class mentioned in this sutra do not owe their yogic faculties and powers, whatever they may be, to the adoption of the usual means. Their faculties and powers come to them in an abnormal manner, through birth, I guess is what he's saying, right? This is the important point which gives a clue to the meaning of this sutra. Who are the yogis who happen to possess yogic faculties and powers without adopting the usual means? Anyone who moves among people possessing these faculties or powers is likely to come across some cases in which these powers and faculties are not at all the result of yogic practice in this life, but appear during the course of their life naturally without any considerable effort on their part. Such people are born with such faculties or powers, a fact which is also corroborated by Section 4, Sutra 1. Birth, being mentioned in that sutra, is one of the means of acquiring siddhis, which are special powers. The Sanskrit word bhava has also the connotation of to happen, which further strengthens the idea of the accidental nature of the presence of these faculties. Of course, there's nothing really accidental in the universe, which is governed by natural laws in every sphere. Everything that happens is the result of causes known or unknown, and the fortuitous appearance of psychic powers is no exception to this law. See Section 4, Sutra 1. The question now arises, who are the vidahas and prakritilayas, the two classes of people in whom these psychic powers appear without any apparent cause? Right? Who are they? The word vidaha literally means the bodiless, and prakritilaya means merged in prakriti. Some commentators have given meanings to these words which appear to be far-fetched and unjustifiable in the context in which the sutra is placed. Vidahas most probably refers to the large number of psychics scattered throughout the world who are mediumistic by nature. A medium is a person with a peculiar physical constitution and peculiarity consisting in the ease with which the dense physical body can be partially separated from the etheric double or the pranamaya kosha. It is this peculiarity which enables the medium to pass into trance and to exercise some psychic powers. The word vidaha probably owes its origin to this peculiarity of being capable of being partially disembodied. The peculiarity which is generally accompanied by the capacity to exercise psychic faculties of a spurious kind. In the same way, prakritilayas are not high-class yogis who have obtained some kind of moksha, as suggested by some commentators. On the other hand, they are pseudo-yogis who have the capacity to pass into a kind of passive state or trance, which outwardly resembles samadhi, but is not real samadhi. Such a samadhi is called jada samadhi. In real samadhi, the yogi's consciousness becomes merged more and more, first in the universal mind, and then in the universal consciousness, which is chaitanya. How can those who are merged in prakriti, which is jada, be considered high-class yogis? Exclamation mark. Such pseudo-yogis are found in large numbers and undoubtedly possess some capacity to reflect the higher consciousness in their vehicles. But such powers as they possess are not under their control, and the consciousness which they bring down is blurred, giving them at best a sense of peace and strength and a vague realization of the great mystery hidden within them. These powers are undoubtedly due to some samskaras brought forward from previous lives in which they have practiced yoga, but also done something to forfeit the right to make further progress for the time being. Isn't that interesting? These samskaras give them a peculiar constitution of the lower vehicles, but not the will and capacity to tread the regular path of yoga. It is only in the case of the true yogis, referred to in the next sutra, that these qualifications are present. The interpretation of the sutra as given above is at complete variance with those given by the well-known orthodox commentators. If it has no authority to back it, it has at least the advantage of being based on common sense and facts of experience. If we take into account the context of the sutra, it is apparent that the yogis referred to in this sutra are of the pseudo variety and inferior to those who tread the normal path of yoga outlined in the Yoga Sutras. In fact, it is probably to help the neophyte to avoid confusion on this subject that Patanjali has pointed out this distinction. Whether Patanjali actually meant the class of pseudo-yogis mentioned above when he used the words videhas and prakritilayas, it is difficult to say with certainty, and in view of the theoretical nature of the question, is not of much consequence. Okay? All right, let's go to the next one. Sutra 20. Shraddha, virya, smrti, samadhi, prajna purvaka, ittaresham. Shraddha, virya, smrti, samadhi, prajna purvaka, ittaresham. Faith, indomitable energy or will, memory and intelligence or high knowledge or keen intellect, essential for samadhi, preceded by, for others, of others. In the case of others, Bhava-pratyaya yogis, it is preceded by faith, energy, memory, and high intelligence necessary for samadhi. In the case of the true yogis, in contradistinction to pseudo-yogis referred to in the previous sutra, the attainment of various progressive states of consciousness in samadhi is preceded by the presence in the sadhaka of certain traits of character which are essential for the attainment of a high spiritual ideal. Patanjali has mentioned only 4 such traits in the sutra, but the list is not necessarily meant to be exhaustive, and each trait which has been mentioned implies far more than the literal meaning of the word. The essential idea which the author obviously means to emphasize and which the student should try to grasp is that the attainment of the true yogic ideal is the culmination of a long and severe process of character building and discipline for the unfoldment of our powers and faculties from within, and not the result of chance, stunts, and favors bestowed by anyone, or the following of any cheap methods of self-culture in a haphazard manner. This warning is necessary in view of the hidden desire in a very large number of aspirants to enjoy the fruits of yogic practice without undergoing the necessary training and discipline. Instead of taking to the true path of yoga and trying to develop in themselves the necessary qualifications, they are always after easy methods and new teachers who they hope will be able to bestow on them siddhis, etc. as favors. The 4 qualifications given by Patanjali are faith, indomitable energy or will, memory, and the keen intelligence essential for samadhi. Faith is the firm conviction regarding the presence of the truth we seek within us and the efficacy of yogic technique in enabling us to reach the goal. It is not ordinary belief which can be shaken by contrary arguments or repeated failures, but that state of inner certainty which is present where a purified mind is irradiated by the light of buddhi or spiritual intuition. Without this kind of faith, it is impossible for anyone to persevere through many lives which are needed by the ordinary aspirant to accomplish the object of yogic discipline. The word virya in Sanskrit cannot be translated by any one word in English. It combines in itself the connotations of energy, determination, courage, all aspects of an indomitable will, which ultimately overcomes all obstacles and forces its way to the desired goal. Without this trait of character, it is not possible for anyone to make the almost superhuman effort which is required in going through the yogic discipline to the end. The word smrti is not used here in its ordinary psychological sense of memory, but in a special sense. It is the experience of the large majority of aspirants on the path that the lessons of experience are forgotten again and again, and the same experiences have therefore to be repeated time after time, thus involving tremendous waste of time and effort. The yogi has to acquire the capacity to note the lessons of experience and to retain them in his consciousness for future guidance. Take, for example, a man who is suffering from indigestion. He knows that a particular kind of food which he likes does not agree with him. But when the particular food comes before him, he forgets all about the repeated sufferings which he has undergone, yields to the temptation, takes the food, and goes through the suffering again. This is a crude example, but it illustrates a state of mind which is generally present and which must be changed before progress in yoga is possible. We've been going through all kinds of miseries life after life. The misery of old age, the misery of being torn away from those we love dearly, the misery of unfulfilled desires, and yet we are involving ourselves in these miseries again and again by our desires. Why? Because the lessons of these miseries fail to make a permanent impression on our mind. So the aspirant for liberation must have the capacity to learn from all experiences quickly and finally, not needing to go through the same experiences over and over again, owing to the failure to remember the lessons of these experiences. If we could but retain such lessons in our memory permanently, our evolution would be extraordinarily rapid. The capacity to retain such lessons in our consciousness gives a finality to every stage which we cross in our onward journey and prevents our sliding back again and again. Samadhi prajna means the peculiar state of mind or consciousness which is essential for the practice of samadhi. In this state, the mind is turned inwards habitually, bent on the pursuit of the reality hidden within it, absorbed in the deeper problems of life, and oblivious to the external world, even though taking part in its activities. Samadhi prajna cannot obviously mean the state of consciousness during samadhi, because it precedes the state of samadhi, and samadhi is the objective of yoga. If samadhi has been attained by following the regular yogic technique, Bhava-pratyaya, then it is real samadhi, in which the yogi is vividly aware of the realities of the superphysical planes and can bring down with him the knowledge of the higher planes when he returns to the physical body. He is in full control of his vehicles all the time and can pass from one plane to another without suffering any intervening loss of consciousness. On the other hand, if the samadhi is the result of mere birth, Bhava-pratyaya, then it is not the real samadhi, as pointed out previously. This spurious kind of samadhi may, at best, give fitful glimpses of the higher planes, which are not reliable and under the control of the will. And even these may disappear as erratically as they have appeared. Okay, so the next one, which I'm not going to read just now, is Sutra 21, Tivra Samveganam Asanam. Of those whose wish is intensely strong, sitting near at hand. If samadhi is nearest to those who desire for samadhi, is intensely strong. It is nearest to those who desire, whose desire is intensely strong. Right, so if you have very intense desire to experience samadhi in an unbroken way, right, it will come closer to you based upon the extent of your desire, which is very interesting. And we will read that next. Thank you for joining me today.